Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Game Day Eve. So you know what that means. We're only 24 hours away from the Florida State Seminoles taking on the NC State Wolfpack. As always, here at Locked On Seminoles, we bring you the #1 Florida State Game Day preview, and that's with our Know Your Foe series with the host of the Locked On Wolfpack podcast, Mr. Kenton Gibbs. Kenton is a former defensive lineman at NC State. He was one of Dave Doeren's first recruits. He talks about his time there, the offensive struggles overall with Devin Leary, with offensive coordinator Tim Beck, and also how this NC State defense is nothing short of elite, but also how Florida State and Jordan Travis can win today's game. But with all that being said, let me not hold you back any further. Without further ado, let's go over to myself, Dave, and Mr. Kenton Gibbs of the Locked On Wolfpack podcast.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Drake here, and today, not only do I have Dave in the stream yard, but we have the host of the Locked On Wolfpack podcast, also former NC State defensive lineman, Mr. Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, what's going on, my guy?
Oh, nothing much, man. I'm excited to be here. Last time I was here, Dave wasn't here, so to have him here now, it's a great time. We're gonna talk some Noles football. We're gonna talk some Pack football, and I may upset y'all before the end of this episode. I may upset some Noles fans, but I tell it like it is, like it ain't what it could be and what it can't. So just letting y'all know that's what's gonna go down today.
Don't worry, Noles fans are already upset right now.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. They always start that way, man. But let's start actually with your own background. Like we said at the top of the show, you were not only an NC State lineman, but you were one of Dave Doeren's first recruits in one of his first recruiting classes. Do you want to talk about your time briefly over at NC State and also basically how you're acclimated to the culture there?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll tell you this. Anybody who doesn't remember me at NC State, I am perfectly fine with that. I spent much more time on surgery tables than I did on the field. So, I promise you I won't take it personally. But with that being said, I was a part of Doeren's first ever recruiting class over there. I secured the fumble that got him his first ever ACC win against Syracuse, my redshirt freshman year. And it was a blast, man. Coming from Detroit to Raleigh is a little bit of a culture shock, but it's not bad here. It's not bad, and I like to tell people that Raleigh is like a barometer city, right? Raleigh is that perfect blend of like it has a small town feel to it, but it also is like growing into a big city to where like if you're from the middle of Nowheresville, South Carolina, Raleigh will feel like New York. But if you're from Detroit or Miami or LA, like Raleigh will feel like the country to you. Because when I first got here, I'm like, man, there's a lot of trees out here. There's a lot of animals around. Like this is all right. This is a nice slow pace. This is cool. So yeah, it's a great city. It's a great town. And the reality is Raleigh is not like a college town per se, because there's a lot going on in Raleigh outside of campus. Like campus is one part of town, and then you got a ton of city outside of it. But it's a beautiful city. It's called the City of Oaks for a reason. I mean, just trees as far as the eye can see in some places, and it's really nice. I live on the opposite side of town from where the campus is now, which is kind of it's kind of cool. But the unfortunate part is everything closes at like 8 p.m. and it's like part of the reason it was named one of the nicest places to raise a family. So Wolfpack Nation is an intense fan base, intensely loyal. And also fiercely critical of the team and of the coaches and all that good stuff. So, this is, to me, honestly and truly, as a Detroit Lions fan in the NFL, to be a Wolfpack fan as well, at times makes me want to look at God and say, why? Why did you do this to me? Stop giving me your strongest battles. I don't know who had their name in my mouth and told you I was one of your strongest soldiers, but please, just one championship. You know what I mean? Like neither one of those teams have won a championship since 1983. So I wasn't alive then. We could just get one in my lifetime for either team. I'd be great. I'd be happy. You know what I mean? I don't care about the sport as long as it's one of the big four. You know what I mean? Men's basketball, women's basketball, football, baseball. Give me one. You know what I mean? Women's basketball got close, but somehow UConn got a home game, even though they're a 2 seed. We're not going to talk about that right now. So yeah, it's been a great time being a part of Wolfpack Nation, and they're the fans and the listeners of the Locked On Wolfpack podcast. Again, they'll call me on my stuff if they feel like I'm saying something that I shouldn't be saying. They'll call me on it. But when they feel like I'm spot on, there's no better supporters in the world. So it's been a great time, and I wouldn't have, if I go back and do it all over again, I wouldn't do anything differently. I still rock with the pack, and I'd probably lay off some of the painkillers post-surgery, but that's about it. That's the only thing I'd do different.
Yeah, Kenton. So I worked in sports info at Florida State, and I traveled to a bunch of stadiums, and there was nothing to me like NC State's fan base. I mean, I've talked a lot of crap about this on this show, and I don't know what it is about your fans. I think they're probably overlooked in the scheme of North Carolina. You got UNC, you got Duke. I mean, not for football, well, this year, but it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. But you walk into that stadium, and it's as ravenous of a fan base for not being 100,000 or 80,000 person stadium as I've been to. What is it about NC State that makes that stadium and fan base so just? I can't find a word other than ravenous.
There is a passion and a love for NC State athletics that is unlike anything I've ever experienced. Okay. In high school, I played for one of the best high schools in the nation at Cass Tech up in Detroit. We are like one of the top 5 in terms of players in the NFL right now in the nation. Right. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, you would think like, oh, we've got like a storied tradition and everybody like wants to be at our games and all that. My senior year, we lost one game in the beginning of the season, and nobody came to the next game. It was like dead silent. And at that point, we already had the first ever state championship in the history of the city of Detroit under our belt. So we were like, in the terms of Division I, so we were like, where's everybody at? What's going on?
Yeah.
When I came to NC State, like, to say that these are not fair weather fans, first of all, the weather ain't never fair for NC State. The weather is always cloudy, rainy, something's always happening or going on. But guess what? NC State fans will come out regardless. They will show up regardless. This is not a fan base of people who just like, oh, I saw this shirt in Walmart, so now I'm an NC State fan. Or, oh, like NC State is just like they're so popular. Like, I just like NC State. If you love NC State, you really love NC State, and you will fight about it. You will fight claw, tooth, and nail to let everybody know that we're the red and white from State, and we know we are the best. That's just how State fans are. And man, I'll tell you, it makes doing the show fun because honestly and truly, I'm not going to diss anybody else's fan bases or anything like that, but the reality is this. There are other teams where if you lose a game, even if it's to a Clemson on the road, like fans check out for the rest of the season. Like, oh, no point in the playoff. No, we don't need to come anymore. NC State fans, they don't give a crap about any of that. My true freshman year, we were god-awful. It was Doeren's first year. There was the clash of like, oh, I'm an OB recruit. I'm a Doeren recruit, all that type of nonsense going on. And we took the Walk of Champions before we played ECU. That was towards the end of the season. And at that point in time, there was no hope for a bowl game. There was no hope for like literally anything. There was nothing. There was no reason to be excited, no reason to be there. And yet the path for the Walk of Champions was still lined with NC State fans. And I'm talking about from little newborn babies all the way up to great Mima and Pawpaw out there that like, hey, are you sure they need to be out here in this weather for like a team that's not good? Like, and it's everybody was just happy to be there and cheering us on and wanting to give high fives and all that. So this is, again, Wolfpack Nation is, when you say you don't have another word besides ravenous, I'll give you one. Indescribable. This fan base is literally the intensity, the passion is unlike anything I've ever seen. And trust me, as a Lions fan, I know, because being a Lions fan gives you an advantage in the dating world, because whatever you like to date, women, men, non-binary folks, indifferent, people know if you're a Lions fan, you will never leave them. You are the they need to give you no reason to stay, and you will still be right there. What do you need, honey? Oh, for sure. I got it. So to see the Wolfpack fans be even more intense than the Lions fans, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
I love that. I also love the subtle shots over to your friends over at UNC and also Duke overall, and wait for a little bit of Wake Forest football. But let's now move over to y'all's expectations heading into the year. NC State had a lot of fanfare there. I think Big Game Boomer actually had NC State as a potential CFP shocking pick. So I kind of wanted to start with this and then go almost over Dave Doeren. What was the fan base's expectations heading into the season? Where are you right now with those expectations? And how do you feel Dave Doeren has basically been able to cultivate the sort of culture and also this sort of strong NC State team that we see now heading on Saturday?
I think that is such an interesting question, and it's kind of a difficult question to answer in that the fan base is so varied. There's so many different sects within the fan base. There are the ever optimistic that are like, if we're good, they're like, we're going to the playoff. This is our year. We're going to the playoff. And then you've got the folks, and this is probably the biggest chunk. They're the most realistic, and they're like, we can probably, if we got a good team, they're like, well, we'll probably be good this season. We got to see how it plays out, how it develops. And then there's the second largest block, which is like, no matter what we do, even if NC State is in the actual playoff, they're still like, we're not going to make the playoff. Like we're 12-0. We're the number 4 team in the nation. Somebody's going to jump us. They're going to bump us down to 5. I can feel it, So I would say that there was a feeling that we could be a playoff dark horse. Absolutely. But I think that the expectation as a whole was to win 10 games, 10 games plus, potentially get to the ACC championship, and just more importantly than anything else, not have a game where we fall completely flat, because that's been NC State's Achilles heel. It's always been, hey, we can play with the best of anybody. But the flip side of that coin is we can lose to anybody. We just talked about on there how we ruined Florida State's hopes and dreams in 2012. And then what happened the next year? We got blew out 35-0. And then what happened as far as even in the year where we dashed Florida State? So we went on to lose to a Virginia team that was god awful, I believe. So I mean, it's the reality of being an NC State fan. It's just that the expectations coming into the season, I don't think that most Wolfpack fans were like, hey, playoff or bust. If we don't make the playoffs, Dave's got to go. No, for the most part, I think that is a very, very slim minority that was feeling that. But I think for the most part, everybody was looking at, 10-plus win season, getting to the ACC championship game potentially, or a New Year's Six Bowl.
Folks, I'm sorry to pull you guys away from the wonderful sit-down we got going on right now with Mr. Kenton Gibbs of the Locked On Wolfpack podcast, but we would be remiss here at Locked On Seminoles and talk about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up the college football season, whether it's taking Jordan Travis over 260.5 yards, under Brandon Armstrong 212 yards, or even Drake May going up against Miami, those damn Canes and the University of Coral Gables, going over 265. That's a lock. Head on over to Underdog Fantasy today to basically have a great time. Easy picks, easy to play. 2 to 5 players across any team, not just your team, and decide if they will finish higher or lower than their projected yards. Overall, head over to Underdog Fantasy today. Use promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON. That's one word. And Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Once again, deposit $100, get $100 back for free by going to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store / Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. That's one word. Get in on the college football pick'em action today.
Well, we have a pretty good sample now. We're 5 games into the season. Obviously, the season for NC State started with those really lofty expectations for a lot of your fan base and nationally. Devin Leary also had a lot of hype going into the season. It's hard to talk about NC State without talking about him.
I want to preface this first real quick. Dave has actually kind of been one of the contrarians when it comes to Devin Leary. I do kind of want to put that out there real quick before we dive deeper into this.
I have, because he made all like the Davey O'Brien watch lists and like Heisman dark horse lists. And for me, watching Devin Leary, he's always been a good quarterback, but nothing about him has ever like wowed me. Like obviously he's no Trevor Lawrence or Jameis. He's been very good. This year has been a little bit of a different story. What is it this year that's causing Devin Leary to struggle, and have his struggles adjusted your expectations thus far?
So first of all, let me say this. If you're going to be a contrarian to Devin Leary, give him a fair and reasonable bar. You just said that he's not 2 number 1 overall picks. That is great. That's insane.
He's no Malik Cunningham.
You're
He's
getting,
no Malik
you're getting the
Cunningham.
full Dave experience. This is what I deal with every single day. There you go.
Also, if he's no Malik Cunningham, have you seen Louisville this year?
I'm telling you, I still believe in the kid.
The Fighting Scott Satterfield's got a lot of problems to sort out. Malik Cunningham ain't one of them. But
Free Malik.
with that being said, has his play adjusted my my expectations? Not really. And let me tell you why. While his play has been worse than expected, there have been other parts of the team that have played out of their minds that we were like, wait, what? Where did this come from? Aiden White has turned into a playmaking, I don't want to say lockdown corner, but he's turned into a prolific playmaker overnight. You look up, and every time you see number 3, he's got the ball in his hands. Now, whether or not he catches it, I mean, hey, he plays DB. Who knows? But the reality is Aiden White has turned into one of the best corners in the game. Pitts has cleaned up some of his penalty problems from last year, even though there was a pass interference against Clemson as well as a targeting call. The targeting was legit. He belonged out of the game after that one. The pass interference, more of a phantom call, but we won't complain about that. The reality is other parts of the team, other parts of the offense. If we look at the running game, everybody was looking around like, man, you lose your top 2 rushers. Who's going to step in? What's going to happen? And Demi Sumo says, if y'all don't know which way to go, I'll make it easy. Follow me. Give me the ball. I'll show you which way we need to go. And he has been a godsend in terms of his contact balance, in terms of his vision, and in terms of the fact that he runs angry. He just is a guy that he's not physically imposing and just this hulk of a man, but he runs like he is. He runs like he's the juggernaut. And once he starts leaning forward, you're going to need multiple hats to make him lean back or his knee to touch the ground.
So then overall with the offense, and so like we've basically seen how Devin Leary has taken not only a step down, but he actually has taken a significant step probably. I think you said it before on one of the Locked On ACC shows when you're on there on Mondays that, will the real Devin Leary please stand up? Yeah. And overall, is it a scheme thing? Is it a weapons thing? Because I know that you're not the biggest fan of your offensive coordinator, Mr. Tim Beck over there. So what is it exactly? Because I know Emeka Emezi, he's now gone. Thayer Thomas and Devin Carter are your 2 main weapons. So what is it exactly that's basically kind of stifling this offense? Because right now, that's the main reason FSU fans are looking at this game as potentially being a winnable game is because your offense is basically leaving your defense to try to do everything.
I agree. And I would say that it's absolutely a situation where it's partially on the coordinator, but it's also there just seemed like there was too much pressure on Devin Leary to start the season off. And this is, everybody likes to say, we don't believe in pressure and we just go out and do our thing and all that, but you can see it. You can see it. And there are different types of pressure, but you can always see it. It's palpable in the way that a quarterback plays, right? For example, when quarterbacks are amid a quarterback battle, you can see the pressure of, oh man, if I miss this throw, they're going to put the other guy in because he's not even the backup. He's just the other guy. Like I gotta do everything right. I got to do everything perfect. You could kind of see the same thing with Devin Leary, but maybe the internal talk in his head was, oh man, I've got to be the Heisman guy. I've got to be all these things. Clemson was the first time against an FBS opponent that I truly saw Devin Leary let it loose, and he was accurate and on the money when he wasn't hurried. If our offensive line holds up in that second half, I have no doubt in my mind we're having a very different conversation right now. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, Devin Leary had disappointed to start the season off, but I think I'll say this. I don't know based upon what you can look at last season and say you did not expect him to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation this season, especially given he was one of the best in the nation last season. Mm-hmm. The play that he has displayed this year has been flatly astounding at times in terms of how disjointed this offense has looked. But yes, part of that does go to Tim Beck. Again, we saw the recipe to beat Clemson. We saw the recipe to make their defense look like they're human. You bring in extra blockers to take care of that prolific defensive line, and you trust that their corners and safeties will be immature and not make the plays that they need to make at the moment of truth, that they'll panic when the ball's in the air, piss down their leg, and congratulations, it's Katie Dids at the doorstep for your boys. That was what Wake Forest did, and it worked. The biggest play of the game for NC State, what did they do? They left Jordan Houston in the block. He picked up a blitz. We hit Devin Carter down the sideline. And we never went back to that. We never went back to max protect. Let's protect our offensive line by having extra bodies in the block and keep going deep. So I do think that part of the struggles were, I don't think that it's ever 100% one thing or the other. I think it's a blend between Devin Leary kind of feeling that pressure of, I've got to be perfect and I've got to be this. And also Tim Beck being Tim Beck, because I just don't understand why we're still running trick plays against Clemson. I don't understand why last year the trick plays that we ran almost got us beat. This year we decided to go running back pass in the red zone with a third string running back. I'm going to tell you this, Dave Doeren is a much kinder man than me, because I would have went right up to that press box after the game and I would have said, hey, Tim, don't worry about getting on the bus back with us. Don't worry about getting on the plane. Don't worry about it. I've already called you an Uber. It's paid for on my card, but you ain't getting back on this bus with this team, man. So, I'll see you in Raleigh, or actually we'll have somebody clean out your office. It'll be outside the Murphy Center. Hey, it's been real. It's been fun, but it ain't been real fun. See you later on the other side, Tim. All right, take it easy, big time, because he's been atrocious.
It's funny because you are not the only person and you're not the only fan base feeling that way. Our own Drake right here happens to feel that way oftentimes about our defensive coordinator, Adam Fuller. And speaking of the defense, NC State's defense, I think a lot of people, everyone expected that to be y'all's real strength going into the year. Depending on where you look, NC State's defense is still top rated overall and in a lot of different categories. My question to you would be, is this defense, A, as good as you thought it would be going into the season? And B, what it occurs to me looking at like the PFF stats, for example, that NC State's weakness is tackling on defense. Talk to me about that a little, because that appears to be really the only weak spot I see in that defense.
PFF grades are trash. Let me get that out the way now. PFF grades are trash. They're subjective. They're bad. I do not like them. Let's just start there. But next, how has this defense performed? They performed better than my expectations. This defense has been lights out. There have been games where I look at this defense and I say to myself, what this is a playoff defense. This is the type of defense that has you in the situations to where you're looking around and saying, man, are we really one of the best teams in the country? That's us. That's us. This is that type of defense. And I'll tell you what, if we could bring back the Devin Leary, if we could reach into, if we could get into the hot tub time machine and bring the Devin Leary from last year to this year, with this here defense, I have no doubt in my mind, again, we're looking at a very different scenario in terms of leaving South Carolina undefeated. But not only that, again, this defense in terms of tackling, are they bad at tackling? I would say absolutely not. What I would say is that they have a ball hawking mentality of the first person there, hold them up, next person, go get the ball. So obviously, if you're looking at that with a certain lens or with a certain set of eyes, it's very, very easy to interpret that as, oh man, look at these guys missing tackles. When in reality, it's like, I'm not trying to, the tackle is secured. I'm going for the ball. Oh no, I've fallen off this guy and he falls forward for a yard. What a terrible missed tackle. I have mistaken. What a terrible thing I have done. Wow, what a problem. Like this defense to me, I will say this. If this defense continues to play how they've been playing so far this season, and if they are receiving help from our offense at an adequate level, this defense may go down as one of the all-time greatest defenses in college football. And I'm very much so mean that, not from a talent standpoint, not from a standpoint of you're going to look up in 5 years and see like 6 Pro Bowlers from this defense. No. That's not the situation. But you're going to look at what this defense did in this era of football where a lot of games turn into track meets on turf. And you're going to say, wait, they were doing what? Wait, they were averaging how many yards per play? Because to me, yards per play is a big indicator up until you get to about 65 plus plays on defense, because that's when you start getting in that territory of like, all right, these boys are wore down.
You're gassed. You're gassed at that point.
Yeah. So to me, this defense has been much better than expected. Again, those outside corners, we knew that the safeties and the nickelbacks were good, but to see our outside corner step up and our safeties playing disciplined football, Tanner Ingle not being ejected once, one of your guys, Cyrus Fagan, being a complete and total stud in every aspect of the game that he's asked to do for us. This is a secondary that has caught up with the front seven, and this is a front seven that still wants to set the pace as we are a dominant group, and it's great to see him.
I mean, overall, you see the entire defense when basically you have like Drake Thomas, Isaiah Moore, like that's a very solid middle of the field. So then you're saying all this about your defense, how they're an albatross when it comes to opposing offenses. What should Florida State do? How should they scheme up to basically not beat them, but somewhat try to penetrate the defense? Because like right now, what you're telling me is that if this defense is that good and we just struggle against Wake Forest, like that kind of gives me some warning signs. So what would you do, or what should Florida State kind of try to do their best at to kind of score on this defense?
So, I mean, I think the key to scoring on this defense is to basically say a few Hail Marys and but seriously, the key to scoring on this defense is basically exploiting mismatches. Like I just talked about, this is a defense that they are scheme solid. The players are better as a collective than they're better than the whole sum is better than the sum of the individual parts. Absolutely. With that being said, find your mismatches, right? Like at the end of the day, Pitts is good. He's going to be out for the first half due to targeting. If that mammoth of a wide receiver, Johnny Wilson, is not targeted repeatedly, because it was shown when Pitts was out of the game that we had problems covering Clemson's tight ends. If you don't see that matchup and say, hey, listen, we're not going to run the ball against this team. You all are down, Bless, Caden, and Rob Scott on the offensive line?
Yeah.
Running the ball may not – I know you got a three-headed monster back there. That may not be the ticket. However, we don't have a 6-foot corner that plays a ton of football outside of Pitts. So with that being said, I'd probably say, hey, guys, we're going to go trips over here, isolate Wilson so he gets some one-on-one coverage, and let's make something happen over there. Let's see what we can do. Because, again, I think that this Florida State offense is good. I think Jordan Travis has a very good case to say he's been the second best quarterback in all of the ACC, not just the Atlantic. I think he has a case to say he's been the second best quarterback in all the ACC. And with that being said, I mean, you got to trust them. When you look at a defense where stopping the run is their specialty, that's where their bread is buttered. You're down a lot of offensive linemen struggling to move it on Wake Forest. Let's go ahead and trust these two. Let's, the giant receiver and the quarterback that's playing above his head, let's go ahead and trust them.
So obviously, just hearing you guys have this incredible defense. You have an offense that has, I guess, relative to expectations, underperformed, but still has the talent there, still has the capability. What worries you about this game? Because a lot of people have NC State on upset alert. A lot of NC State fans appear to be worried about this game, and a lot of Florida State fans appear to be more confident than I think they might otherwise be against such a good defense. What worries you?
The psychological aspect of trusting 18 to 22-year-olds. The reality is we are trusting these 18 to 22-year-olds to not let one loss turn into two, turn into three. Okay? This is a team that is coming off an emotional loss at Clemson, which, of course, you never want to lose at all. Nobody wants to lose in football. But to have certain expectations of the season and then take that loss, it's easy to fall into the abyss and the trap of, no playoff, boys. Let's feel sorry for ourselves. Let's not prepare the right way. Let's lick our wounds a little bit. Let's kind of just, go through the motions in terms of preparing. And then, boom, a motivated, pissed off Florida State team comes in and that's a little bit of that could be a potential problem for you. That is the thing that concerns me the most, because no disrespect to Florida State, and it feels crazy to say this about Florida State, especially when I was there and they had Dalvin Cook and Kelvin Benjamin and Nick O'Leary and Jameis Winston, and a defense that had more future Pro Bowlers than players who weren't going to play in the NFL, with Jalen Ramsey, Darby, and all those guys. It feels weird to say this. Florida State does not have enough talent to where I believe that NC State man for man will be out-talented. I don't believe that's the case. But I do believe it's the case that we could very easily see this team show up with an immature mindset, with the mindset of, oh, well, we just lost last week, and we were a playoff dark horse, and now our playoff chances are looking like slim to none, and Slim got nothing but a pinky toe left in the door that's finna come out. Like, it's easy for that to happen. So it's incumbent upon Doeren to get this team ready. And it's incumbent upon the leaders of this team who fell flat somewhat last week. And I'm looking at you, Grant Gibson, who fell flat last week. Grant Gibson is our All-American, All-Conference, All-That center who had a very disappointing game. And so I'm looking at you all. I'm looking at you, Devin Leary. I'm looking at you, Peyton Wilson. I'm looking at you all to see, what is this team going to make out of the rest of this season? That was one game. Do you let it turn into two? Do you let this Florida State team come in and beat you where, again, this is very weird to say, but a team that you're more talented than, do you let them come in your house and take your food because you're still thinking about what's going on down the street or what you could have done differently down the street? That's what I'm concerned about.
Okay. So then now kind of sort of like heading over to a wrapping up for the show for today. I always ask this for every single guest for our Know Your Foe series. I want you to give me one player on offense, one player on defense that FSU fans should be looking out for, but not your Devin Learys, not your Shaheem Bows, not people like, that we know that are actually saw like big household names. What are players that are sort of the unsung heroes of each side of the ball that FSU fans might probably will be hopefully or unfortunately be acquainted with on Saturday?
I'm going to tell you this. I talked about him earlier in the show. He's not the biggest guy in the world. But when it comes to covering folks, I don't know what he did this year. I don't know what type of lair or dungeon he sat in and studied wide receivers and their route trees until he was blue in the face. But Mr. Aiden White is a name that you need to get familiar with, because I'm telling you, when I say you need to use those big receivers to go at NC State, that's not the guy to go at. That is not the one. He's not one of them.
He's not that guy.
Yeah, he's definitely not that guy, pal. So he defensively, he's probably the guy that, he's not he doesn't have the acclaim of our linebacking trio that, many people are talking about. He doesn't have the acclaim of a Durden, who was all conference last year. He doesn't have that type of acclaim, but he's a baller in his own right. So watch out now, Mr. Travis. If you think you're going to throw it all willy-nilly over there because you got 2 6'4" plus receivers, watch it. Offensively, Keon Lassane is a guy that has been coming on really, really strong these past few games. He scored his first touchdown in his NC State career 2 games ago. Last game, he was second in receptions and receiving yards. So I think that those are two that, Florida State's defensive backfield. Now, I'm going to tell you, Florida State, for all the things that I've talked about, for all the, this is not, Jameis ain't walking through that door and all that good stuff. This defensive backfield is still really talented, but I also think that sometimes they struggle mentally. And so if you tell yourself, well, I don't really need to pay attention to Keon Lassane. I mean, who is he? Who is this guy, right? Porter Rooks is the 4-star that had offers from Alabama and all that. Thayer Thomas is the old reliable, been here forever and a day. Devin Carter is the big body, physical jump ball guy. Who's this Keon guy? You'll get acquainted with him as well. So those are the 2 guys that I would say, when it comes down to it, if you find yourself on if you find yourself having a long Saturday where a few people down in Tallahassee are going to have to replace their TV screens, those are 2 names that could possibly be a part of that.
Kenton, you know what we got to do before we get you out of here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So NC State, Drake, what are they right now? Is it a 3-point favorite?
They are a 3-point favorite as of this recording. Yes.
So on a neutral field, that's a pick 'em. That may surprise a lot of people, and that may anger you. But spread aside, Kenton, who wins this game, and what's the score?
Let me tell you something. Whatever Vegas does can never upset me. I don't think the Vegas under-over last year for NC State was like 5.5 games or 4.5 games going into the season. And I thought to myself, is Vegas on drugs? They had Bailey Hockett-Hockman as their quarterback. I call him Hockett-Hockman because he never knew if anybody was down there or how many defenders were there. He was just going to let that thing rip. And he won state. I want to say it was 8 games or 7 games, whatever the case may be. And we had our actual best quarterback coming back. And they were like, yeah, 4.5, 5 games, maybe 6. What do you want from me? Sometimes Vegas like giving away money, especially with names like NC State. So with that being said, I don't know what Vegas knows that I don't, but I'll say this. I don't foresee a team that strength is running the football, yet they're down 3 offensive linemen, winning a game against NC State. I don't foresee that happening. So with that being said, I have NC State winning this game 27-17. I've got them winning 27-17. I think that Florida State struggles to move the ball a little bit. I think they get a play here or there. I think especially early, like I said, this defense will miss Pitts with 2 massive receivers out there on the edge. But with that being said, I think that this Florida State team is not strong enough on the defensive line to do the things that Clemson did to make Devin Leary uncomfortable. I think Verse is amazing. I love me some Jared Verse. Fun to watch him rush the passer. Fun to watch him do his thing. And he looked great coming off injury against Wake Forest last week. He looked phenomenal coming off injury. But with that being said, I don't know. It might be me. I could be crazy. I think that Tim Beck now knows, okay, my offensive line has a ceiling. There's a certain level that they can get to. Some of these guys are going to need help sometimes. And because of that, I think that we'll leave in our backs who, like, while they're good pass catchers, we don't have any Alvin Kamaras in our backfield. So maybe we'll leave them in and they'll help out in pass protection. They'll chip Verse on their way out. And I think NC State takes care of business 27-17.
27-17. And folks, y'all know that on Saturday morning when we huddle up, we will give you our predictions then. But Kenton, it's always a pleasure having you on, my guy. It's great to hear, a different sort of opinion when it comes to this, especially with NC State, who slowly is becoming sort of a rival with Florida State when it comes to these closer games, because these are two very solid teams in the odds. But Kenton, we love having you on. Please let the folks know where they can follow you and follow your work.
Absolutely. Wherever you're hearing this podcast or watching this podcast right now, you can find me at Locked On Wolfpack. You can also find me at LO_Wolfpack on Twitter. You can also find me on Twitter at TGIF_Ken. But please understand, you are not getting Ken the sports journalist there. You're getting Kenton the man and all the things that come with that. So, those are all the places you can find me. And it's always great being here. You know what I mean? Florida State is an absolutely storied program that has so many great things going for them outside of just football. Like there's when I hear that y'all fans are like always pissed off and all that, I'm like, listen, think about this. At least y'all don't have the fans like Nebraska that like are living off of Tom Osborne in the 1990s, are living off of like, oh, we used to be great. Shut up. Y'all were the only team in the nation that had a strength and conditioning program, and y'all had what Notre Dame has right now, and that you all were the star boys of NBC. You all were the only ones on TV. So, of course, you could recruit all the best players in the world to come to that cornfield in the middle of nowhere in Lincoln. Of course you could do that. It doesn't exist anymore. College football is a multi-billion-dollar business. Everybody has some college football on. So guess what? Maybe be happy with winning 9 games. At least you all aren't there, right? Florida State fans, that's something to celebrate. You'll never be Nebraska. You'll always be in a hotbed of talent. You'll always be where there are a ton of great players. You'll always have wonderful beaches and all that good stuff to attract recruits. And we know all the other things that can attract people to come down to Tallahassee. You've got all that. So at least that's something to hang your hat on.
You're speaking to my soul with the Nebraska hate. So great having you here, Ken.
I loved it, man. We got the Miami hate last week with Cam. Now we get the Nebraska hate with Ken. But that was awesome. I loved every second of it, folks. Please don't forget 5-star reviews, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast from. And also, if you're on YouTube, like this video, hit the subscribe button at the tippy top and ding the little bell so you know when new content drops. And follow Ken. Ken the man has some great memes. He also talks a lot about Marvel. He's a little bit of a pseudo-nerd when you look at the timeline. Like, give a man a follow and also get subscribed to his show. Now, that was Kenton. That was Dave. This is Drake. And we'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Take care, everybody.